So people, I decided to get myself the new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, but as we all know, it's an absolute ball ache to rig out and actually make usable. And I'm not a massive fan of like really big rig setups, so I decided to make myself a small minimalistic style Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera rig, and I'm gonna show you that today. So yeah mate, let's check it out and see what it's saying mate. Bye. What's going on, you lots? I hope you're all sweet. So mate, yeah, I've got the new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K and I absolutely love it. But as we all know, it is a ball ache, mate. It is a nightmare to rig out and actually make usable. No tilt screen, horrendous battery life. Literally only lasts like 20 minutes, these little numbers. Honestly, I've had the A7S Mark II for years and I thought, hold on a sec, mate. This is gonna be nowhere near as bad as the A7S II, but my God. This thing really is horrendous when it comes to battery life. Now, there's a couple of reasons that I personally want a small run and gun, lightweight rigging setup. And one of them reasons is because a lot of the times I'm filming in places I haven't got permits for. Now, when you turn up to like quite a well-known public place and you want to start shooting some high quality video, if you've got a really big rigged out camera, you're 99% of the time going to get someone come up to you and go, hold your horses mate, what you doing? What are you doing with all this camera gear? Have you got a permit? Are you allowed to be here? Are you insured? And all of that kind of BS mate, and you don't really need it. So that's the reason why I want a small lightweight setup so that I don't really draw too much attention when I'm shooting. And another reason why I want a minimalistic setup is so that I can go from being handheld to being on a gimbal, which is my Weebill S, as quickly as I possibly can. That transitional period between being handheld, quickly rigging up something that actually fits on a gimbal really annoys me. A lot of the times I'm shooting against time, so I have to be really swift and fast between handheld setups and gimbal setups. So the minimal rig that I've made myself allows me to go from being handheld and onto my gimbal in under 60 seconds, which is bloody wicked. So as you can see on my camera, I haven't got a cage on it. I really don't want a big cage, especially if I'm doing kind of run and gun travel style stuff. If you're doing bigger commercial stuff, then yeah, you probably are gonna wanna rig out your camera to be really nice and big. But for me, I wanna keep it simple, mate. All I've got is a 90mm NATO rail from Small Rig on the top of the camera. That will basically allow me to mount everything that I need to mount onto this camera onto this NATO rail on the top. Now, the first thing I'm going to mount on the top of the rig is this Small Rig NATO rail. This video is not sponsored by Small Rig, but I'm talking about them a lot. And basically, this will just slip onto the top of the NATO rail. Pump that in, mate, and you're good to go. That, for me, feels really nice. I want to extend the width that I can hold the camera, and I will get much nicer, solid handheld shots. Just like this. Now, a lot of people think that you need a big cage to mount like a handle on the side like this, but you don't, mate. That NATO rail is simply enough to add this on, and if I want a top handle as well, I can clip that on the top, no problems. Now, when I first got this handle, it was a little bit longer than it is now. I got my make art now on. Josh Yo would be well proud of me, mate. Just got the saw out, mate, chopped the end off. Happy days, now we're at the right height. I've also got a cold shoe mount on the top here in case I want to chuck a microphone or whatever I want to chuck on there. But I also found that this thing right here comes in real handy. This is simply just a bracket and that will jump onto the NATO rail that I've got on the handle, and it allows me to have another cold shoe mount right directly below the screen. Now, obviously, with this handle, you can move it along kind of wherever you want it. If you're going to travel with it, maybe just chuck it in there. But when you're actually shooting, have it out here so it's nice and sturdy for your hands. Now, personally, I'm shooting into a Samsung T5 SSD. I've got this really short USB-C cable that I don't even remember the name for, but it's a ribbon cable, so it doesn't kind of go wherever it wants to. It will kind of go in a nice formal fashion, is that the way to put it? I don't know. But anyway, I've got some Velcro on the bottom here, and this is gonna go straight onto the end of my handle. Now, I know a lot of people ain't gonna like the fact that I've got it on a bit of Velcro and it's not locked in. Like all of you safety people, you lot do your thing, I'm gonna do my thing, all right? Chill out. And on the end of my USB-C, I've got these two 90-degree little adapters, and that allows me to chuck it in my SSD slot without covering up any of the other holes on the side of my camera, because I wanted it to kind of look a bit clean. And having this ribbon cable and them adapters allow my setup to look pretty damn clean. I really don't like cables, mate. So if there's cables flying about, it's going to give me anxiety, and I just don't like messy setups, mate. Messy setups make me just want to throw up all over my rig. And the last thing I want is vomit and probably beer and, you know, bit of noodles. So yeah, that's really clean, and this cable actually sits up near the handle, so it almost looks like there ain't even a cable there. So yeah, that's a bit of me. Now the next thing that I'm gonna add to this setup is an external monitor. So here we go, external monitor with a Sony MPF battery on the end. That simply just slips into that little adapter that I've chucked on there, that little bracket. Obviously, you've got your HDMI straight in, and then your power adapter straight in there. Now, I know what you're thinking, hold on, James, why have you got a power adapter going in? You've only chucked on a monitor. Hold your horses, people. Look, everyone calm down. I'm a clever geezer. Well, I ain't really. I got this idea from someone on YouTube called Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K Tech. Shout out to you, my friend. I'm not sure if that's your maiden name, BMPCC 4K Tech, but whoever you are, mate, you're a legend. Basically, this Sony MPF battery, which typically powers most monitors, has a DC out on it, mate. And this one's actually 10,500 milliamp hours, which is a bloody hefty amount of battery life in such a small little battery. So this battery basically goes on the back of the monitor. Obviously it powers the monitor, and then I can get my DC cable that powers the actual camera, whack that in there, mate, shove my cables under my little clip so it's all, you know, nice and clean, and mate, that battery will power the camera and the monitor for 3.5 hours. Like, are you taking a piss, mate? That's sick. That little run and gun style setup there, I've got my SSD on the side, which comes off with Velcro. The reason I've got it on Velcro is because I can take it off from here and stick it onto the back of my laptop, which is where I edit from, really simply. I want to try and keep that workflow, and it's just a bit more simple, mate. I'm a simple geezer. I don't do things complicated. So for me, that setup there is absolutely perfect. There's not tons of cables flying around all over the place. It looks relatively neat. And yeah, the best thing for me is that if I want to go into a location where you're not allowed to film, where you need little cameras, you're not allowed big setups like this, which isn't actually a big setup, but for a lot of public places, you're not really going to be allowed to film with something like this. So the little trick that's up me, I haven't got sleeves, take out the adapter, HDMI, take this off, shove it in the little standby mode that I've made, undo this, mate. Bosh. All I've got to do now is chuck my little handheld rig over there, and now I've got my DSLR. Bosh. So now when I'm out in like a national park or some kind of local area where if you're out shooting with a big rig, people come up to you and go, hold on, mate, what are you doing? Have you got a permit? You're not allowed here with that big camera. I'll go, everyone just calm down. I'm only shooting me little DSLR. 60D, Canon, Nikon. No, it's not. It's not a Nikon, mate. I don't see what the issue is, mate. It's just a little DSLR. It's not like I'm shooting 6K RAW. Then it gets a bit awkward when they ask you where your viewfinder is and you just say that you like to keep your face like really close to the monitor. But anyway, my whole point is that you ain't really going to get people say much to you if you turn up to the Taj Mahal with this. If you turn up to the Taj with this, they'll basically take it off you, and yeah, mate, you ain't getting in with it, basically. Now, I know that you haven't got your battery capacity that you've got on that battery, but this will do ya. Chuck a couple of them in your back pocket, mate, and you should be pretty sweet for about an hour's shooting. So for me, this is a really nice little run and gun setup for when you need to be in a certain situation, and it's so easy to simply clip that on and off. There we go, mate. Monitor's back on. My whole rig is basically there. So as I mentioned before, one of the big things for me is going from being in a handheld setup onto a gimbal. Really fast, really efficiently. So let me show you how I jump straight from being like this to the gimbal. Once you've got your little plate on the bottom to go on your gimbal, I basically would just keep it on there all of the time when I'm shooting. So as I mentioned before, my SSD will come off, jump on my little standby spot right there. I'll take out my HDMI and my power cable, and off comes my handheld rig. SSD will just chill quite nicely. That's a new one, that, isn't it? So yeah, the SSD will simply just sit on the top via the bit of Velcro, and then, you know, camera will simply just sit very nicely onto my gimbal, strap her in, make sure she's nice and tight. And there we go, mate. The gimbal is ready to rock and roll. Now the Weebill S does need a counterbalance to allow the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera to actually fit onto it because the camera's so bloody wide. But Zhiyun has come out with this little naughty little number that will fit onto the corner of the Weebill S, and then it's got a cold shoe on there so that you can mount like mics and GoPros, whatever you essentially, I wouldn't mount a GoPro on there, but you pretty much just kind of want to put a microphone on there, and that will then balance out the gimbal instead of using one of these counterbalances. So big up Zhiyun for that little innovative feature. But hold your horses, James, where's your power source? Your battery's only gonna last like 20 minutes in that camera. That's a rubbish setup. Everyone calm down. I've come across this absolutely wicked little number. This is the Blind Spot Power Junkie. This is basically an adapter for the Sony MPF batteries. It's got a 1/4" screw on the bottom so you can chuck that straight onto a tripod or wherever you want. It's also got a little adapter so that you can like zip tie it to things, which is pretty sick. And then it's got a cold shoe mount. Now I've basically mounted a hot shoe to hot shoe mount so that I can slip that onto my gimbal really, really easily. And where is he? Here he is. And the Sony MPF battery will simply just clip on like a boss. And on the bottom of the Power Junkie, you've got your DC out, and you've also got 2 USBs on the bottom of there so that you can power 2 USB sources, which is pretty sick. So all you have to do is you have to get your little DC adapter, plug that bad boy into your camera, and there we are, mate. That is my little gimbal setup for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Now for me this is quite essential, going from being in this state to my previous handheld state really, really fast. I don't want to be fiddling about moving things all over the place just to go from handheld to being on a gimbal. This for me is such a wicked little setup. This Zhiyun Weebill S is the nuts with this gimbal. I recently just took this entire setup to France and got some wicked little shots. I used the gimbal and I also used the handheld setup just because I wanted to test it out in like really tough environments to see basically how it's going to hold up and see what the workflow is going from being on the gimbal to being in that handheld state. And yeah, the workflow was really, really nice. I was very, very surprised at how well it actually worked. Now, I think the good thing about this entire setup is the fact that every single different application, every single bit of rigging that I bought for this rig, it doesn't just work for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera like some of the camera cages. Each of these different parts will work on any different camera in the future that I use. So yeah, mate, this entire rig was more of an investment. It wasn't just like I was buying this rig just for the Blackmagic. All of it is going to work for any camera that I want to use in the future. So you've got to think about investing in rigs instead of just like buying rigs for one specific camera. So people, I really hope you enjoyed this little number. I'm going to be getting a few naughty little shots of this gimbal and this camera and this setup right here, ready for you lot. A couple of naughty shots on the channel, you know how it is. Let me know in the comments if I've done anything wrong. I'm sure I've done something wrong. People get really defensive over their rigs, man. Chill out, it'll be all right. Everything's going to be fine. I promise you, it'll be fine. But yeah, people, feel free to give me some abuse in the comments because that's what I'm here for, really, innit? Anyway, people, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll be catching you lot in the next one, mate. Bye.